Hey guys, it's Jen. What happens when I get to sit down and talk to somebody about poetry and I have no clue what the hell I'm talking about when it comes to poetry? But I've got the biggest poetry nerd on today. I cannot wait for you to meet him. Stay tuned. Hey guys, like I said, I'm Jen. I am with the Book Asylum Podcast, and today I have James Lawson Moore with us. And welcome, James. I'm so excited to have you on because I know absolutely nothing about poetry, and you're actually my first poet on here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. So your poetry is we were talking before the show. Explain to me how what type of poetry your poetry is and talk to me like I don't know because I really don't.
So it's I, it's very contemporary. It's spoken word, kind of free verse poetry.
Mhm.
Uh, if you come across folks like Joyette Cook or um, folks like that, that kind of very much like that, or if you read stuff on Quill Bill magazine or Rattle magazine, that kind of stuff, uh, very much my stuff is very much influenced by Def Poetry Jam and some of the open mics I went to when I was living in Richmond and in Virginia Beach, and I also inspired by Scott Woods, who's an African American poet and essayist from Columbus, Ohio. Definitely check him out if you can.
Oh,
Also
sweet.
inspired.
My home state.
Yeah, uh, uh, that guy, librarian, culture critic, poet. He just put out a new book of poetry um, that uh, I'm on a strict book buying budget, so I can't get it right now, which I think is rude. But honestly, I'm way too obsessed with books
How
anyways.
dare they? Now, I because I have the same thing. I'm not allowed to buy books.
Yeah,
My husband says no more because we have literally we when we moved to Arizona, we were staying with my in-laws, and that's where we're at currently. And I have a storage unit with stuff in it that I refuse to get rid of. Um, it's mostly books. I'm not gonna lie. I could start a used bookstore.
yeah. My
Is that
my
how you are?
yeah my dream is to run a mom and pop new bookstore
Mhm.
near me, like a small town bookstore. Um, uh, so one of my favorite writers, Larry McMurtry, he died just a couple years ago. He in Archer City, Texas, which is where he's from. He did a used antiquarian bookstore, and I got to visit it once in my life. That's my dream is to
Nice.
have a bookstore, but that's later down the road. Um,
Yeah. Mm.
but yeah, no. In reference to the poetry, it's a mix between poems that kind of tell a story,
Mhm.
and then ones that are more just image written, where it's just I'm giving you images,
Right. Right. Okay.
word images. So I'm kind of alternate between the two.
Okay.
Um,
Kinda like a hybrid.
yeah.
Okay. What made you start writing poetry?
Um, well, uh, I first when I was first writing, without really realizing that it was writing, I was actually making my own comic books in third, fourth grade.
Oh,
It
wow.
was like third or fourth grade when I discovered comic books and I
Mhm.
started reading Batman, and I read a little bit of Superman. I wasn't as big a fan of Superman. I was more into Batman. And then I got into Marvel comics and stuff. And then in fifth grade, when the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie came out,
Yeah.
I wanted to make my own superhero movie. So, and I had no understanding of what a scripts or screenplay format was, but I tried to write horribly derivative, cheesy, corny superhero.
I mean, you're young too, so there's that as well.
I mean, there's that too. It's just I look back at it and I cringe at
Don't we all?
I think one that was like the son of James Bond, and he wasn't the son of James Bond. He had a different last name and everything, but I just named him the son of James Bond. Uh,
Hey, he could have been in some weird way, you know?
yeah, I don't know. Childhood deal.
The brain when you're a child is a
Yes,
completely different animal.
exactly. Eighth grade was when I started writing poetry and some little bit of fiction. Um, I had a teacher, my English teacher, who really got us into enjoying great literature. Read The Hobbit
Mhm,
that year. I read the short story version of Flowers for Algernon
mhm.
by Daniel Keyes. Read Harrison Bergeron by um, Kurt Vonnegut. Read Sound of Thunder by Ray Bradbury. And then we had to do a poetry project where we had to dissect different types of poetry and then write our own version of it.
Mhm.
And that kind of got me into writing poetry. Um,
Okay.
and my early attempts at poetry were sonnets and ballads and occasional villanelles, um, which of the form poems of the ones where like there's a strict shape and
Right.
rhymes and everything. I actually like villanelles the best.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm sorry, you like what the best?
Villanelles, Villanelles. I think that's.
Okay, tell me why and then tell me what the hell they are.
Uh, well, um are you familiar with the Dylan Thomas poem? Do not go gently into that good night.
Yes. Yes, I am aware
That's
of that one.
yeah, that's a villanelle.
Okay, okay.
And it's like I think it's a 19 or 21 line poem, and most of the stanzas are 3 lines, and you alternate repeating lines throughout the poem.
Mhm.
It's almost like an aside or a chorus or something where you're repeating
Okay.
something.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to explain outside of that, but it's got that type of, and it kind of it kind of drives home the point of the poem. Um,
Right, okay.
I really don't do rhyming poetry anymore. Um, there's plenty of poets who do rhyming poetry, and there's plenty of room for that, and there's room for all kinds of you know. I'm not one of those gatekeepers who's like, oh, you have to write a certain way, right?
Right,
Eh,
right,
But
right.
but for me, I that's not typically I don't do the rhyming structured poetry outside of the occasional villanelle anymore. That's just per how I work.
Okay.
y- you know, but when I was first starting out in the eighth, ninth grade, the structured the structured stuff was, I mean, that was how I learned. That was how I learned how to
Right,
do do it. So
right.
uh and and I ended up reading so much Charles Bukowski, probably too much Charles Bukowski, uh, uh, to kind of, I read too much of that to make me want to really go back to the structure stuff anymore, because you um,
It opened up a whole new world.
kind of every young writer, and every young white male writer in particular, goes through a Bukowski phase. But there's only so much drunken misanthropy and other stuff in there. You take what you can, and then you get the heck out. Uh,
Right.
uh, so yeah, uh,
How and so when did you first get published? Have you were you I guess I'm gonna rapid fire you some questions. When
okay.
did you first get published? Did you do it yourself? Have you looked at like an agent or anything like that?
Yeah.
And how are you doing it now?
Um, So I, in late high school, getting out of high school, I had some stuff published in local newspaper stuff.
Hmm.
And then when I first entered college, I was in community college to begin with, and I regularly entered the writing contest there, and I've been published, had poems and fiction published numerous years for that. Um, I did self-publish some small books, a handful of collections that aren't really available anymore, and I self-published one indie crime novel that I don't really push
Okay.
because I like the story, but I could have done a lot better with the editing and so forth.
Okay.
Um, if that makes sense.
Any possibility of revamping any of these unavailable and or
Um,
unpushed publications?
the so the poetry, I take occasional pieces from the old stuff and I put them into new books to send
Okay.
out.
Okay.
Um, it's just a matter of like revamping that stuff. The crime book I leave available just in case people are interested in it.
Okay.
Uh,
Is it on Amazon?
it is on Amazon.
And it's
Uh,
under your author, your name, James Lawson Moore? Okay.
yes, yes. It's on the run. It's on the run with Mike and Gun. Gun is spelled with two N's because that's one of the characters' last name. Um, and it's a simple black cover with a silhouette of a guy in a fedora. Um, I like the, like I said, I like the story, but I could have done a lot more of the editing. Um, but and I haven't really done much with an agent or anything because I really don't know what I'm doing as far as looking for an agent. And
I
really
feel
just
you.
and with poetry especially, there's not really there might be some publishers in the poetry world that want agented manuscripts,
Uh-huh.
but most of the poetry publishers I see don't do agents. You submit directly.
Okay.
And that's what I did with this book that I put out. My I'm gonna plug my own book because
Do it.
uh,
That's why you're here.
yeah, I Alien Buddha Press, which I, that's a heck of a name, and I'm kind of interested in knowing where the name came from because it's
Yeah,
kind
it
of
is.
it's an interesting name. But he has an open call for books for
Mhm.
submissions and stuff. And he puts out a lot of chat books. Um, so I I was previously with a publisher to put out some work. Long story short, that deal fell through.
Mhm.
Um, and, and yeah, so that deal fell through, and I was going through some stuff and whatnot.
Mhm.
But I saw the open call for this place, and I had someone say, "Hey, submit work to this place." So I did, and he liked it, and um,
Oh, good. So that's how you got published with them.
yes, um,
Okay.
it's a very small. It's a very. I mean, you've heard of small presses, of course.
Oh, yeah, I
Like
go through one.
yeah, um, like in the horror and even in the crime community, there are small presses and so forth.
Mhm.
This uh, I would probably say that Alien Buddha Press is kind of a micro press.
Okay.
And that's not an insult at all. No, that's
No,
he does.
right. Yeah, no.
That's just like on the scale of
Size. Yes.
size. And but what I've seen, he, I am proud as heck of what he did with my book, and
Awesome.
I've seen what he's done with, like Rebecca Cuthbert, who's a
Yes.
poet and a fiction writer. She has multiple books out with has a poetry collection, chat book, and a short story collection. I love what she's done
They've
with
done with
them and
yeah.
everything.
That's
um
awesome. I mean, because I think it really helps when you have a great team that's backing you up.
yeah.
And, because I go through Anger Eagle Publishing and
Okay.
I adore DJ Cooper. And she does such a wonderful job for me. The editing team is awesome. I look so smart because of them.
Yeah.
Because me and the commas do not like each other. So but, yeah, no, it is so important to have that back team and that backbone to help you and help realize your concepts. So it's really cool to have that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so you've got that one. Do you have is that the only book you've published or have you published I know you said that you have some that you can't find. And so how many do you have out there right now and where are they?
So on Amazon right now, I have
Mhm.
the chapbook. I have my small crime novel, and I think I have one more poetry collection that I self publish. Word pictures etched in my head
Okay.
is the title of that one. And I designed the cover for that one
Mhm.
myself, and that was kind of a ass backwards way of designing
Process.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, uh, that's the main thing that's keeping me from doing much more self publishing. Um, it, I it's like I don't have funds are tight, right? Because
Right.
I mean, you get it. We all gotta struggle
We're
to pay.
all struggling. Yeah.
But like it's like I don't necessarily have the spare funds to pay for the cover and for the edit
Yeah.
and for the formatting and so forth. And if you're gonna do it, you got to do it right, right?
Right.
And that's going to involve some money. So and I don't necessarily have the mental fortitude to sit there and um beat my head against the keyboard trying to get
It's
um
hard to do stuff when you're also trying to work too, you're working a full-time job and you are trying to get, your books together and trying to do all this stuff by yourself is really difficult.
yeah.
Have your edit or your publisher doesn't offer that?
The uh the the manuscript was so the manuscript was the this chapbook was pulled from material from a previous book that was to be published by someone else, and that deal fell through.
Right.
Um, and so I reworked that material into a couple different books,
Mhm.
including the chapbook. So the chapbook I sent was already pretty much polished and stuff because I went through the process
Okay.
to try to
Yeah.
get it published previously, right?
Right.
And um, so the the guy who published this book pretty much formatted it, and he asked for my ideas for what I wanted for the cover and so forth. But
Mhm.
he pretty much did design the book and everything, so I didn't have to do any of that.
Right, that's what I was asking. Doesn't your publisher offer that? And
Yeah,
Ju
yeah.
okay. Alright. Yeah, because
Uh,
that to me because like, if you're that was one of the things that when I was looking for a publisher for my book, that I wanted to make sure they had an editing team, they were gonna do the cover, I'm more than happy to give my ideas, but, I for my covers, um, I was just like, "I don't care what you do, DJ." It's just make it look cool. So, I that's what
are
that's
those
what
like post apocalyptic type books?
yes, I'm a zombie, horror. writer,
Okay, right on,
dystopian author.
right
Yeah, and
on.
I'm actually in the process of like I have a paranormal thriller that I'm writing right now, and I have a sci-fi that I'm writing. I have another zombie book that I'm writing. I'm writing 3 books at once, which is really difficult because the sci-fi book is a quantum I have to research quantum physics and some physics and I'm that's a lot there. So, I think I like hearing about all these other different writing avenues, of authorship because, like, when I was young, of course, I was some lovesick girl who was my heart was ripped out and stomped on in front of me multiple times by people, and I wrote poetry too when I was younger, but I um, never even thought of getting it published. And I mean, because like it was stuff that came from my soul, what little
Yeah.
I did have at that time. But it was just one of those things where I was just like, I don't know if I could ever do that. Why did you choose poetry?
Uh, I don't know that I did. It's just something that naturally comes out.
Oh, like the thug life didn't you didn't choose thug life chose you.
Yeah, I'm the
Poetry.
I'm the OG. Uh, uh, well, I actually there. Um, if you look in hip hop culture, poetry plays a big part in hip hop
Oh,
culture. Actually,
huge. What kind of
two.
music did you listen to?
I listen to all kinds of different music. I listen to Ron DMC, of course.
Okay.
Uh, grew up with Aerosmith, Leonard Skinner, Alabama,
Okay.
Garth
Yeah.
Brooks. Um, Garth Brooks is a funny one because there's that one. Excuse me.
Mhm.
Just got over sickness and the cough still wants to.
Everybody's got that.
Yeah. Um, but he had that period where he was going to do a movie and an album and everything for the character Chris Gaines. I don't
Okay.
know if you remember the Chris Gaines character that Garth
No.
Brooks did, and it was
Nope.
like scene. It was like that scene music, rock, emo type music, and he had
Oh,
a
yeah, yeah, yeah.
patch and the
Yes.
hair,
Yeah.
and I'm just like Garth Brooks was out there getting them sweet gains, but yes, I made a pun on. I don't care. I like puns. Shut up. I
I
like
love
puns.
puns. I think they're
But
so great.
but yeah, no, yeah, the I love old school country music like Waylon Jennings and David Allan Coe because there was poetry in their song.
Mhm.
John Denver was a poet laureate of
Oh, yeah.
Colorado, I think. And Tupac was well known as a poet.
Mhm.
And they put out a book of his poetry. And Jim Morrison of the Doors, they put out books of his poetry. And obviously Bob Dylan um, won the Nobel Prize for Literature because of the poetry in his lyrics. And it's a good thing he's getting recognized for his lyrics because I don't see what people see in the singing, but uh, I I'm not trying to be mean, but I can't sing either. I can't sing either. But then again, I'm
But
not.
you're not in front of a microphone.
Yeah. Um. But
Well, because I was wondering, because my husband has actually turned me on to a lot of really awesome artists that they're lyrically, I have never heard rap done this way or hip hop, whatever I like to call it conscious rap because
yeah,
they talk it's like Sage Francis, Atmosphere, Aesop Rocky. He has me listen to Prolific, or I don't think that's his name anymore. I think he goes by something else. But like there's a bunch of rappers out there that if you actually listen to their words, they're actually talking about the stuff that happens, whether it's in their life or in the course of their day or in one guy, it was Atmosphere. He's got a song, it's all about his cat.
yeah.
I love it. His cat is called it's a song called Kirby, and it's all about his cat. It's awesome, because that's the love of his life. But that's that to me is it's poetry as well, and if you none of you have ever heard of them, I encourage you to listen to them, because I was very shocked that I enjoyed them, because a lot of times a lot of things that my husband likes, I'm like, nah, I don't think so, but when I once I stopped and actually started listening, it was a really, really good, it's good beats, it's good lyrically, it's not, you know, um, bitches ain't nothing but hoes and tricks, kind of crap, that you hear in today's rap. They
Yeah,
talk about things.
I I I think one of the and poetry gets a bad rap for its own reasons, but
Pun intended.
um, but hip hop and rap and that sort of um culturally in America and it and it's people as someone who comes from, I mean, as the son of a mechanic turned preacher whose granddad was a tobacco farmer and so forth, country music gets a bad rap too because
Oh yeah, I
because
hate
it's
it.
like, oh, country music is nothing but you know putting women in their place, and oh, I got my truck, blah blah. It's like that's a lot more. Now a lot of contemporary mainstream country is not pop country.
Let's just leave out music of today, because a
Yeah.
lot of it sucks.
Well, my point is that and I'm guilty of it myself, is that we there's a lot of good in these various genres that people overlook because
Hmm.
it's easy to stereotype these genres. uh,
Absolutely.
it's very easy to, it's just like genres of fiction and so forth. It's very easy
Yep.
to stereotype.
Yep.
um
To
so
me, poetry is something that you inspire me, because poetry is something that smart people do. That's how I've always seen it. And anybody can write a zombie horror. And I'm just sitting here. I'm like, oh, I cheated my way through my first 4 books. We'll see what I can do with the next. But but it's not that way. I mean, poetry does take some, I mean, you have to have the basic knowledge of the English language.
I think once you read enough Shakespeare, enough Edgar Allan Poe, enough Langston Hughes and
Mhm.
Allen Ginsberg and so forth, um, I think if you read enough of the or Sylvia Plath or oh, hey Precious, oh, 1 second, my girl Precious is,
Oh,
oh, now you don't want,
she's
you're a
camera
mess.
shy.
She, she
She's
just
like,
wants,
"Get me off camera."
she does what she wants. She's the diva. We call her the diva. Um, what was I saying? Um, it just like with anything else, like if you read enough Western novels, you get the flavor of Western novels, and that informs your Western novel when you go to write it.
Mhm.
Um, eh, 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 the poetry goes back. Poetry is one of the oldest traditions. Like you had the epic poems that were spoken or oral spoken, so forth.
Yeah.
Um, it's funny to me the Harold Blooms and the other folks in the world that tried to diss slam poetry and spoken word poetry, saying, "Oh, it's a bastardization of the genre." It's like poetry got its start by being spoken. It's like what, like, piss off with that. Um, like and go to church. Um, I uh I had to make that joke.
Yeah, of
piss off,
course.
go to church. Um, I'm gonna have to go to extra church for that. But
Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday for you.
yeah, um, I try I do try to be a good Southern Baptist, but I'm very much well. That's that goes into the whole complexity of the human spirit and what it how complex a human being is. Because I grew up Baptist. I grew up son of a mechanic turned preacher and so forth. That's a
Mhm,
big part. But I have all these like I also consider myself a progressive uh, minded person, and I have all these other I have this. I'm 34 years old and I still haven't fully figured out who and what I am.
I'm 47 and I'm still stuck.
Right.
It doesn't get
Um.
any better.
Yeah. So
I think a lot of people would agree with you that that is, I think, why the whole point of life is we're just here to run the wheel, the hamster wheel to figure out who we are and what we're here for. So,
yeah,
I mean, that I don't you might never figure it out.
yeah, and I think that's depending on what the purpose one has for writing or for reading.
Mhm,
That like I write poetry because it's a good way of capturing the thoughts in my head and figuring out who and what I am.
mhm.
Um, and I'm able to be when I'm able to get it right because there's some days where I'm just writing just to get something down,
Right.
right? And then there's some days where it's like I'm really cooking.
You're on it. You gotta flow.
Yeah. And when I'm really there, I'm probably the most honest with myself in that mode.
Mhm,
Um and I'm trying to do that in other stuff too. Like I'm working on I just started writing a crime novel.
mhm,
Um and it's parts bits and pieces of it are based on actual real life stuff
mhm,
in the family. Kind of um I'm writing well, I'm kind of writing it for two people in mind for my wife and for my dad,
mhm.
and to kind of say, hey, this is me figuring these things out.
Right.
Um, so, uh, because yeah, just trying to figure out this
Right.
this stuff, right? But yeah, I'm working on a crime novel, and I'll be working on some more. I have at least two finished collections of poetry. One that's should be ready to submit at any time, and another one that's might need to do a little bit of editing and stuff. Um, but like the whole point of writing these things is just to get it out and to create something and to it's a piece of who I am.
Mhm.
Uh, and um, I because I'm not at least I don't think I'm good at interacting with people.
Yeah, we were talking about that before. And before we started recording, and I understand, you've had to go through life interacting with people, and at some point you're just like, "Meh, do I really need to talk to people anymore?"
Yeah,
You know? I feel that, and I think a lot of
yeah.
people go through that, and especially in today's day and age, sometimes people are just not nice.
Well, there's that, but there's also like I carry my own baggage, and I bring that baggage with me when I interact with people,
Mhm.
and how I deal with that baggage affects how I deal with stuff.
Well, yeah,
Um,
that's everybody.
yeah,
Everybody
there's
carries around their baggage.
yeah, and how 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 do I deal with that in a positive, healthy manner,
Trying
right?
to figure it out. Yeah, and that's a constant struggle.
Yeah, and if anything, the last year has taught me is like, yeah, I need to deal with that. Right. um
Hmm.
and so I yeah. um uh, I mean, I hope people can see. Even when dealing with tough subjects, and even when dealing with, I hope that people can see the best in what I'm trying to say, and
Right.
it comes across in a way that I hadn't been able to get across in other ways.
So then is the poetry an outlet for you? Is that what I'm hearing?
It's it's not so much an outlet as much as just a way of interacting with the world.
Okay.
A way of expressing things. There are things which need to be expressed, and they you have to find. It's not enough for something. Bless you. Um, that it's not
Thank
enough
you.
for. Yeah, no problem. It's not enough. It's not enough that a thing needs to be expressed. It needs to be expressed well.
Hmm.
And sometimes it can be expressed well in a novel, or in a screenplay, movie, in a song, or in a poem. You need to bless you again.
Thank you.
uh, uh, I know the mic was muted, but I could see the.
My allergies are kicking butt today.
Yeah, yeah.
So
uh,
apologize.
no, you're good. But yeah, it's just, it's a way of getting the thing out, the thing that need to be said, and doing it in a way that
Yeah.
ser- serves that thing best.
Yeah. I love it. I'm really excited to see what you come up with in this true crime that you're doing right now. Well, this the based on true events crime novel.
Well,
And
it's
I
when oh, sorry
oh no,
sorry
you go right ahead.
when I'm pulling aspects from my own personality, and from, basically, I'm basing characters on real people, but it's not
Right.
necessarily. At some point, I want to write a true crime book,
That would be
but
awesome.
this novel will be pure fiction. It's just I'm basing
Oh,
characters on.
okay. So people that you do, it's just people that you know from real life.
Yes, like the grandfather character is going to be kind of a blend between my dad and my granddad,
Right.
but he's going to do some moonshining and stuff, and so uh, neither my dad or my granddad did moonshining, so
Right. Okay.
uh, I but I I I grew up loving horror fiction. I've kind of had to step away from some horror, um, because, uh, well, I don't know if you're familiar with the author John Saul.
Yeah,
Um,
I've read a couple of his books.
yeah, I read some of his books too, and there was a number of his books that, to begin with, one of the main characters tries to commit suicide as a young child,
Uh-huh.
and as someone who's dealt with suicidal ideations, I just,
It's hard for you.
yes, and um there's some stuff like Ronald Kelly I can still read with no problem stuff, but there's some things that there's some things that I personally don't have the
Right.
hits for anymore. Does that make sense?
Yes. Would you rather have trigger warnings on your books then?
Um, I personally am I personally am fine either way.
Okay,
If-
so if you're reading a book, it doesn't matter whether if you get surprised like in John Saul's books, the suicide trigger,
Yeah,
you don't think that he should have a trigger warning on his book?
I I I think an author has to have the right to decide whether they
Okay.
need to do a warning or not,
I
because,
like
like,
that answer because I don't agree with trigger warnings because if you're reading a horror, you've got to expect it kind of, but
Well, I mean,
I like that answer.
I read a lot of crime novels and a lot of true crime books, and those have triggering content too.
Oh
But
yeah.
it's in a different context as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm in a space where I'm moving on into other things, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's not to disparage the horror genre or anything.
Anything. Right. Right.
Oh, that's just I'm like I said, I still read Ronald Kelly because a lot of his books feel like down home storytelling, but with these other things into it, and and you kind of have to know what you're able to stomach at some point. I
Right.
mean, I think trigger warnings are okay. I mean, I look at trigger warnings as a similar thing as ratings on movies,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it
Um,
does perfectly because I mean, I'm not gonna not read a book just because it has a trigger warning on there. I'm not gonna not read a book that doesn't have a trigger warning. I that should be, like you said, up to the author. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
yeah. And I'm certainly not for censoring anybody's work or anything. And
Right.
I mean, I I s- no work exists in a vacuum. Like when you write a piece, it's and put it out there for the audience to consume. The audience is going to respond to it, right?
Mhm.
And so, and if the audience responds to it, they're going to respond to it in any way they
Yeah.
decide to respond.
Yes. Yep.
Uh, and there are there are certainly going to be things that I'm reading and I'm like, why? Like, what is the point? I like there are
No, I
things
get it.
that there are things that I think are like, okay, putting this aside now. I there this past year, I there was a book I read, um, and I'm not gonna name names or anything because I'm not gonna
Okay.
going to.
That's fine.
But I a subject I'm fascinated with is cults.
Mhm. They're
As
interesting.
Yeah, as a religious person, I'm fascinated by cults. I'm fascinated by the Jim Jones thing. I'm
Yep.
fascinated by I have such a morbid fascination with Scientology. It's not even funny. Um, but so like horror books dealing with cults fascinate me. And so I read this one that bless you again. Um,
Thank
but
you.
yeah, you're welcome. I, there's this one that dealt with a cult, and it dealt with a specific kind of cult, and the first third of it was broken up into three parts. The first of it, I've read it, and I'm like, okay, it's one thing to deal with hard issues. This book seems like it's reveling in it. Does that make
Ah,
sense?
yeah.
Like if you read Jack, bless you, if you read Jack Ketchum, if you read Off Season or The Girl Next Door, um, like those deal with some really intense, tough subjects. But he's actually calling things out in
Yeah,
society.
there's a way to do it. 100%. There's a way to do it.
Like I read those books, and yet, yeah, it's hard to get through some of the scenes in those books. But it's not like he's telling you something about. It's like, hey, this open your eyes to this because this is something to be pissed off about.
Yeah.
Um, and and maybe that's the problem with me as the reader. I'm not getting what the guy was trying to say.
I
I'm
don't know. I
I,
see, to me, that's kinda part also it's the author's job to try and get what they're trying to say across to you in a proficient manner.
you're right, and you're right. It's just eh, that book didn't entice me. Um,
Got
I'll,
it.
it didn't entice me, but but somebody if somebody else finds value
Right.
in
We
the
all
book,
have different tastes. Right.
okay. The like if it's not something that's like illegal, if it's not like smut, like not smut,
Yeah.
snuff,
CP.
snuff,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. If it's not that stuff, um, you know, I again, I'm all I as a writer, I'm all for free speech. I'm all for it. Like you
Well,
can't
you
get
also have a choice of whether you're gonna read it or not. So go ahead and write it if you want, but that
right.
doesn't mean that everybody's gonna read it.
Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
You, at the end of the day, you kind of have to know your audience a little bit.
Yeah.
Uh, this book is not going to be in the church book group. Um,
Right. No, it's
um,
not. James, where can everybody find you? Because we're coming up on closing time.
yeah,
Where can everybody find you? Do you have a website? Or are you just on Amazon? Give us
I
the deed.
I'm on Facebook, James Lawson Moore. You can follow me on Facebook. I'm also on Blue Sky. On Blue Sky. What is my Blue Sky handle? Let me look that up.
Yeah, because that's relatively new, isn't it?
It is. I did have Twitter, or it's X now.
Yeah.
Um, I'm James Lawson Moore on Blue Sky. Um,
There you go.
and um, we were talking real quick. We were talking before
Sure.
about Ronald Kelly. This
Yeah.
is a reprint of his first novel he published, Hindsight,
Okay.
and then this is his novel Bloodkin.
Wow. Interesting cover.
Yeah, yeah. Um, both of these put out by Macabre Inc. Crossroads Media. You can see
Hmm.
the bat on the back. Um, Wonderful writer. Met him in 2023 in person. He and his wife were gracious to me and my wife. He gave me a. I had just gotten married. He gave me a copy of Fear
Oh.
uh, as a wedding gift, and that was a hardcover too. He gave me a hardcover
Oh,
copy.
wow.
Yeah. Um, that book I currently have tucked away somewhere safe, so I don't have to pull out. But yeah, he's great writer. He has a zombie novel called the Buzzard Zone.
Nice.
Uh, yeah, and wait for it. Sorry.
It's okay. I do
Uh,
that often.
it was a long day. It had it's getting cold. It's going to be getting a cold front here soon, and possible ice storm. And we had to pack some stuff up to keep things warm around here. So
Yeah. No, I get it. I'm in Arizona. We don't really have to deal with all that anymore but I used to in Ohio. So we can find you on Amazon under James Lawson Moore
yes,
and on Facebook under that name as well.
yes, and on
And
Blue Sky.
Blue Sky. That's right.
Yep.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on. I am so excited to have a new guest with new prospects of possible customers to be able to pick up your books, your poetry books and stuff. And we're going to be looking forward to your next release. So when you do, make sure you get back a hold of me, okay?
Will do. Thank you very much for having me.
No, thank you very much for being on. And I am Jen, and this is James Lawson Moore, and you are on the Book Asylum Podcast. Thank you so much for being here, and we will see you next week.